Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Stihl HS45 hedge trimmer. Customer complaint is that despite doing a tune-up on it, it still won't start. And looking at this thing, it's been sitting around for a while. There's cobwebs all over it. So let's see what he did for a tune-up. First thing we're going to do is look in the fuel tank. It's pretty ripe. Now he may claim that he put fresh fuel in it, but he probably put fresh fuel over the top of old fuel. I see that a lot, where a customer will claim that a machine has got fresh gas in it, but they never consider that there was old gas in there for a year or however long. Well, it does look like he replaced the fuel filter. The thing looks brand new. So that's a plus. Let's look at this air filter. That looks like it's brand new as well. So his claim that he did a tune-up on it seems accurate. Every time I have one of these Stihls with this style of choke plate, I always check the choke to make sure that it's actually closing tight. Those plates have a tendency to warp, and sometimes that choke won't close all the way, and that'll be a starting problem. But this one looks all right. Looks like we have a brand new spark plug in here. It's never been run on that plug. So let's take a look inside the cylinder and see if there's any reason why it won't start. Any clues in here? We got the piston all the way to the bottom, and we're looking at the cylinder walls. And while it's not the prettiest thing, there's no scoring going on in there. That's not the reason this won't start. So we'll just put this plug back in there, but before I do, I want to make sure we have spark. Now that certainly could be the reason why it won't start. We're just checking for the presence of spark. And it doesn't come out on the video, but I did have a nice blue spark that jumped a 6mm gap. So we're going to say that the ignition coil is fine. That leaves the carburetor, right? And it's not surprising. I mean, we saw that this thing's been sitting for a while. So there's two 8mm nuts that hold this choke plate on. And then we have a gasket. There's two fuel lines that have to come off. And these are stuck on there pretty good. The green one is going to be the one that has the filter on the end. And the black one is the return line. There we go. Then we got our throttle cable. And if I just hold the throttle open, that's going to create some slack in that cable where I can just pop that ferrule out of the lever on the side of the carburetor. So we have harvested one carburetor. And actually, this is a Zama branded carburetor. So this is just an old habit. I put a witness mark on the side of the carb. It allows me to reassemble the carb without thinking about anything and just line up that mark. This style carb usually isn't an issue, but it's just an old habit that's hard to break. So we've removed the primer bulb, and here's our metering diaphragm. Let's pop it off of there and see what kind of condition it's in. It looks like it's pretty hard. Let's take a listen to what this thing sounds like. Yeah, that's a stiff metering diaphragm. So if that thing can't flex and move around and open and close the metering lever and the needle the way it's supposed to, then the thing's not going to get fuel and it's not going to start. or it's going to flood and get too much fuel and not going to start. Our micro screen in the carburetor looks just fine. So we're just going to put a metering diaphragm and fuel pump kit in this carb. We're going to use an Oregon branded kit because I believe that I can't get a Zama kit without going through a Stihl dealer on this one. So first goes down our gasket and then our actual metering diaphragm. And you'll notice that, you know, it's easy to orientate these pieces because the fuel lines are both on the same side. I mean, it goes together the same way you took it apart, right? Let's get this primer bulb screwed down. Look at him go. Yes, our witness mark lines up. On this side, we're going to have a fuel pump. This is the clear diaphragm in the Oregon kit. And then a gasket. And then we'll put our fuel pump cover in place. I'm holding the throttle open a little bit because the idle stop screw is on that cover. And it just makes it easier to get that cover lined up. So that's all we're going to do to the carburetor. Put some soft parts in it. Taking a look at the hedge trimmer itself, you know, the gasket that's on there, it doesn't look terrible, which is a good thing because I don't have another gasket. We're going to put the throttle cable on the carburetor first. Drop the carburetor over the studs while we put the fuel lines on. There we go. There's our return line. Little function check. I don't have the throttle cable correctly in place. There we go. Functions like it should, but there's a little bit of slack in that cable. I think it'll be alright though. Looks good. Let's put our gasket and our choke plate back on. Sometimes these are flanged nuts and putting this together is a lot easier because you can just put it in your nut driver and spin it on there. But when they're not a flanged nut, you know, it takes a little bit to kind of line that nut up and get it started. We got her though. We'll spin these nuts down and crank them down snug. Maybe snug's not a good word. We'll put them down tight, but not overly tight. Got our new air filter on. We're going to put some fuel in it.
Cripes!
I just took a bath. Good thing I was wearing glasses, eh? Not that gasoline in the eye is going to blind you, but it sure does sting for a while. Alright, let's prime this thing up, see if it's going to run. Okay, so it ran. Not great. We're going to need some more work on that. But we also found that the kill switch doesn't work. So we're going to remove the top cover and we're going to test the switch and the wiring. So the first thing I do is I take the terminal off the coil that is the kill wire. And I'm going to connect one end of my multimeter to it and the other end to ground. And then I'm going to hit the switch and I'm going to see that there's no change. So there's no continuity through the switch. Is it the switch or is it the wiring? We'll have to take the handle off of here and get a little closer look at the switch and the wires there. So we got the handle off. Clumsy today. Alright, I'm checking the continuity in each one of the wires and it's good. So I'm checking the continuity through the switch and it's good. So what's going on here? Well, one of them wires was really loose on the back of the switch and I just had to take a pliers and kind of crimp it tighter. And I think I fixed the problem by doing that. Now this top cover, all the screws aren't the same. And if you were to slow this down, you'd see that I had to mix and match the screws a couple times to get this right. Well, our kill switch works. But I want to be able to adjust this carburetor on a high speed a little bit, and I'm at the end of the limit of the limiting stop on the high needle. And once I get this cap off of here, then I'll fire it up again and make a few carburetor adjustments and trying to get it run decent. And if it does run decent, then that's all I'm going to have for you on the Stihl HS45 hedge trimmer that wouldn't start despite a tune-up because it had been sitting forever. Thanks for watching. Later.